I want to point out another piece of the text which I didn't mention before. The very first sentence in the text is that God tested Abraham. God tested Abraham. Okay, God commanded Abraham to sacrifice his son. What about Isaac? He just has to die, that's all. Wouldn't you consider that also a test? I would. Why doesn't the passage start with God tested Abraham and Isaac? Why is Isaac left out of the initial description of the test?
Is it around our definition of a test? So a test is something that actually is beyond your level or at or around your level of what you would do. It wouldn't be a test if it was very easy. So, if for example, Hashem tested you to see if you'd say model ani person, well, you do that every morning, it's not a test, right? So in this example, it might have been quite easy for Isaac and quite a lot harder for Abraham. So it wasn't actually testing Isaac, but it was testing Abraham.
Okay, actually, I think that the direction in which you're going is the direction in which Rabbi Dessler goes. That's what I want to explain to you. I wouldn't put it into the semantics of test. There are easy tests and hard tests. And the fact that something's easy doesn't mean it's not a test. But it might not deserve being headlined in the first sentence of the passage as a test which is significant. But of course, what you're saying so far is only a possibility. It's not obvious why having to die is going to be easy. Most of us would regard that as quite difficult. So we'll have to explain that. But I think that's right in the end. In the end, that's the direction which we're going to go. Yeah.
Isn't there something about though if you like die for God, then there's automatically all of your sins get wiped out or something like that? And
It's a little tricky. The proposition you're referring to, the Gemara says, if someone is killed because he's a Jew, then all his sins do get wiped out.
Okay.
Now this is a little different, but even so, there are some things that which, if you did them, would be tremendously beneficial, and still people don't have the courage to do them. Right? But I think the logic in his suggestion is correct. In other words, that's one natural way to explain why it's not mentioned. It's not mentioned because it can't compare to Abraham's test. The question is, why doesn't it compare? What's the difference between them? Also, we could ask, this incident is held up on Abraham's side as one of the greatest spiritual performances in the history of the Jewish religion. Now, as we mentioned 2 days ago, I think, human sacrifice was very common in the ancient world. And up until 1,000 years ago in Russia and in South America, it was very common. How many thousands upon thousands of people were sacrificed to the gods? Must we assume that they all went biting, kicking, and scratching? Shouldn't we assume that at least sometimes they did it out of dedication and courage and willing self-sacrifice? Parents, children, what is it in this performance that makes Abraham's achievement so unique that it's presumably incomparable with the achievements of anyone else, the dedication of anyone else, where they participated in human sacrifice? That also should be addressed. Now, Rav Dessler has an essay on this subject, and he points out that in terms of all Jewish literature, Abraham and Isaac are real people, were born and lived, acted out lives and died, but they also expressed certain philosophical principles. Abraham expressed the principle of loving kindness, and Isaac expressed the principle of strict justice. Those are the principles that they lived by. In Abraham's case, you see this in open incidents in the Torah's description. There's the famous incident where he offers hospitality to the 3 traveling strangers who happened to be angels, but according to many, he didn't know that. And he was himself just post-operative of circumcision, and great pain and weak, and he runs to serve them in blazing heat. Also, when God tells Abraham that God is going to destroy Sodom and Gomorrah, Abraham pleads on their behalf, even though it's a criminal society. But Abraham's loving kindness for others, wanting to protect others, help others, knows no bounds. So that's open in the text. Isaac's commitment to strict justice is not as open in the text, but all of Jewish literature understands his life as based on that principle. Yeah.
So because Isaac was strict justice, and him dying might have been strict justice that was in accord with what his belief system, but Avraham was like the exact opposite of his.
Wow. Kol hakavod. That's great. That's exactly what Modesta says. Wow. That's great. You got it. I'm going to spell it out so it'll be more easy to understand, but that's the essential idea. Now let's look at the test from Isaac's point of view. Isaac believes in strict justice. This is going to answer the problem of God commanding murder also. He believes in strict justice. Does anyone have a right to life according to strict justice vis-a-vis God? God creates us and gives us life, and it's a free gift. Every moment of life is another free gift. Can I say to God, listen, you've been supplying me for 72 years, you owe me another 10. Why would he owe me more? All I can say is thank you for what you've given me, but to say he owes me, why should he owe me more free life? Even if I used every moment of my life serving him in the best possible way, that would only justify the moments of life he already gave me. It doesn't give me a claim on more life. So if Isaac lives on the basis of the principle of strict justice, Isaac can't say to God, you owe me life. Now God says to Isaac, your time is up. Isaac says, yes, okay, that's how I live. That's my principle of life. That's my way of dealing with God and dealing with the world. So he's being asked to act in character, to apply his character to this test. That doesn't make it trivial. It's not always trivial to act in character, but at least he's being asked to do what he stands for. Abraham, the test is the exact opposite. Abraham is being asked to act out of character, against his character. Abraham's character is loving kindness. Abraham pleads on behalf of criminals. And if you look into the Midrashim to see exactly what the crime of Sodom was, the crime of Sodom was creating an anti-chesed, anti-loving kindness society. It's like early capitalism, No beggars here. No beggars here. Earn or sleep in the ditch. No free lodging. No support. An anti-loving kindness society. The opposite of Abraham. Abraham says, but even so, God, don't destroy them. Have mercy on them. What about his own son? It's his own son. He's a great spiritual paradigm. And not only does Abraham have to tolerate the death of his son, he has to perform it. He has to put the knife to his throat. So Abraham is being asked to act against his basic character. And even more than that, something I didn't tell you before, but there's a famous Midrash, which has a double implication for us. The Midrash says that when it was all over, God told him not to sacrifice him, gave him a blessing. Abraham said to God the following, listen, you told me to sacrifice my son. I had a very good argument against you. Listen carefully to the argument. You promised me, ki b'Yitzchak yikareh lechazara, that your continuation will be through Isaac. You promised me that my son Isaac will be my continuation. Now you're telling me to kill him before he has any children. So you contradicted yourself. I had a very good argument against you, but I didn't use it. I just followed and did what you told me. I didn't use it. You too, God, when you have a very good argument against my children, don't you use it either. Don't you use it either. I gave up on my good argument. I'm asking you to give up against your justified complaints that you'll have against my children in the future. Now, this midrash has a double implication. Number one, it shows another aspect of the test. One who acts out of love is acting out of identification, sharing, participation. You can't love an unknown. You can't love an ex. Love requires some understanding and sharing. God here says to Abraham, I'm cutting you off. I want you to do this without understanding. You'll have no appreciation for what you're doing. Just do it. Just do it. So Abraham's living a life of acting out of love is cut out on every possible level. So Abraham is being asked to act out of character, whereas Isaac is being asked to act in character. And that's why, on page 103, when God recognizes that he's passed the test, in verse 12, he says, do not stretch out your hand against the lad, nor do anything to him, for now I know that you are a God-fearing man. Not loving, fearing. Fear in the Hebrew, this Hebrew word for fear, connotes awe. Also plain fear, but also awe. But God does not praise him as loving God. He praises him as fearing and having awe for God. Because love won't do it. Love won't do it. Once God withdraws from understanding, love won't do it. So Abraham is being contradicted down the line. And that, says Rav Dessler, is why the first sentence says that God tested Abraham. The point of this story, a point of this story is to highlight the test of acting out of character, against character, in areas of character where you're not strong, not confident, not well experienced. It's natural when a person chooses his place in life, his profession, his environment, his project, his goals, to act in terms of his strengths. Of course, you want to do as much as you can possibly do. You don't choose an environment in which you're going to be asked to operate on the basis of your weaknesses. That's natural, but it can't be exclusive. It can't be exclusive. Aristophanes, a great Greek playwright, wrote a play called The Clouds. It's a spoof of Socrates. Socrates is described as someone whose head is in the clouds and feet in the clouds. He doesn't know where he lives. He forgets his wife's name. Doesn't know what his birthday is. And that's making fun of you. You're a great philosopher, but you're not functioning. You're not functioning like a normal human being. The Torah doesn't tolerate that. The Torah doesn't tolerate that. You can be a great scholar. You can be very holy. You remember your wife's birthday, and you remember where you have to go, and you remember the commitments that you have to the society. Spiritualizing yourself out of normal, social, family, friendship life is something that the Torah doesn't tolerate. So, Abraham is being told you've got to operate on a part of your character which isn't basic, isn't strong, isn't primary. That's the test that he's being put to here. Whereas for Isaac, that's not the test that he's being put to. Now, that's the first implication of that midrash. It helps to understand why Abraham's being asked to act out of character. But the second implication of the midrash is what it doesn't say. Let's go back. Abraham says to God, I had a good argument against you. Told me to sacrifice my son. A good argument. You promised me. What other good argument would you have suggested for the midrash to use? It's murder. Murder. How can you, God of the universe, command murder? How can you do that? The midrash doesn't say that. So the midrash is picturing Abraham as having an available argument against God. It's not picturing Abraham as simply a cow, tell him what to do, and he does what it does without imagination, without any independent thought. No, it pictures Abraham as saying to God, I had a good argument against you, but not this argument. Obviously, to the Midrash's understanding, the argument that it's murder doesn't count. Why not? Because of what I told you. Why is this test for Isaac in character? Because God doesn't owe anybody life. God doesn't owe anybody life. When God determines that someone's life shall end, that cannot be called murder. Murder is unjustified ending of someone's life. Murder isn't just killing someone. If I kill somebody in self-defense, that's not murder. If I kill somebody to stop him from killing somebody else, that's not murder. Murder is only when I kill somebody without justification. God is always justified in decreeing that someone's life shall end, because all God is saying is, I gave you free life for so and so many years. I'm not giving you any more free life. There's nothing unjustified about that. So the problem that God is requiring murder is a problem which is non-existent. If George ends Peter's life, then you have a problem because Peter doesn't owe his life to George. But if God ends someone's life, it's not a problem. So God is not the right way to answer the question, how can God command murder, is if God commands it, it's not murder. That's the right way to answer that. Okay, question.
Isn't it always? It's a little tricky to say something like that, isn't it? Because then, technically, anytime someone's life ends, it's because Hashem wanted their life to end. Hashem doesn't want anyone to live that doesn't live. So just because someone, I know you can't say, okay, so this person's life was supposed to end anyway, so this person killed them and it's not a big deal. But like, based on the concept you just said, doesn't that kind of contradict a little bit?
So first of all, there are many sources. I have a whole share on this. There are many sources that say when you're talking about free will can override what God would otherwise have wanted for that person. Free will can really make a difference in what happens to that person. God's attitude can be, as long as no one's free will interferes, he'll live. If someone's free will interferes, then God says protecting free will is more important than his continued life, so that the free will can really make a difference. That's number one. Number two, you imagine a person who's condemned to death in any legal system, and they're taking him out to execution. Now, at 12 midnight, he's going to be sitting down in the electric chair, and the electric current will kill him at 12:03. Right? By 12:03, he'll be dead. At 11:55, as he's walking to the electric chair, someone shoots him, and it takes him 8 minutes to die. Can the person who shot him get off? He was going to die at 12:03 anyway. So now he died at 12:03. No, because you're not the executioner. You have no right to do it. And he'll be a murderer anyway. So that when you accuse someone of murder, it doesn't have to be that he made a difference in how long the person would live. The question is whether he has the authority to execute. So it doesn't have to make a difference.
Okay, so then what about a situation like there's a Gemara that says, I don't know what and where, but I know that it says something about if you accidentally kill someone, then their family member is allowed to come back and kill you, or something like that.
There are a lot of cases, but so what? What was it?
Well, I mean, why would the family member be allowed to come back and kill you if you didn't kill the person on purpose? It's not intentionally murder, and then clearly the other person died by the will of God, because you didn't go out of your way to murder them, but then the person coming back to kill.
Okay, so we're now going quite a far field, but the answer to that is no. But the answer to that question is this: that the word is more in Makos, and it's very specific. It's only where the death occurred through criminal negligence.
Okay.
Not a pure accident, it's criminal negligence. Okay. And when that happens, he's assigned to a city of refuge. And if he stays in the city of refuge, he cannot be killed. Okay. And only if he leaves the city of refuge can he be killed. Okay. So it's not for a pure accident. At any rate, that now explains why there's no problem of murder here. Now, what about the idea of other human sacrifice? Why is this so unique? Thought of as in one of the greatest spiritual performances in the history of the world. Indeed, it's in the Siddur. This whole story is written in the Siddur. Many people say it every day. All ancient human sacrifice was based on economics. It was an economical calculation that we sacrifice people to avoid worse calamities. For example, like Stravinsky's Rite of Spring, if you don't sacrifice someone to the gods, there'll be no rain. If there's no rain, people will die of thirst. That is not a pretty way to go. So you sacrifice a few to save many. And I just want to point out that is not an ancient, barbarian, savage calculation. We make the very same calculation today. That's what the army is. You send out some people to die so that more people of that country won't die. And if you happen to be a pacifist and you're against the army, which I don't recommend, but if you are, then what about the lifeboat cases? The ship goes down, the lifeboat is overcrowded, the lifeboat's going to swamp. What do? Modern, sophisticated, moral people, they cast lots and they throw a few people overboard so the rest of the people will be saved. So sacrificing the few to save the many, let's talk about Jewish law now. Sacrificing the few to save the many is not a savage, criminal, immoral or amoral policy. It's a policy that we recognize quite broadly. Our difference with ancient peoples is we don't think that human sacrifice changes the weather patterns. We don't think it works. But their attitude was, we sacrifice in order to avoid a worse calamity. That's utterly, utterly unlike what Abraham was commanded to do. You imagine, by the way, the text does not record any promise of reward for fulfilling the command or any threat of punishment for not fulfilling the command. That's totally absent. You tell Abraham, if you don't sacrifice your son, we're going to boil you in oil. His answer is, get the oil boiling. I'm jumping in. What? I can avoid sacrificing my son? Whatever threat or whatever promise you give him would have no effect on his motivation. His motivation, as the text says, was only because he stood in awe of God, and God's reality and God's command is more important than any calculation that he could possibly make for himself. That's why this is utterly unlike any of the human sacrifice that took place historically. Okay? We're together? Yeah.
Is, in this case, would Avraham be the executioner, or is it Hashem who...
No, it's Abraham is the executioner, but in a legal system that has capital punishment as part of its laws, executioner is the one whom the legal system designates as the one who should kill the person. Here, God's command. Now, there are people who complain, does this really put us on a par with suicide bombers and with religious pogroms? Don't they all say that God told them to do it? So are we really going to put ourselves on a par with all those people, groups, historical events which we think of as horrific in one way or another? What complaint could we make against the Arabs who blow themselves up or set roadside bombs to kill people, innocent people, women, children? Are we really on a par with those? The simple answer to this question is their logic is faultless. Their logic is terrific. That's why they use that justification, the justification that the creator of the universe told them so. The only problem is they're lying. They're lying. The creator of the universe didn't tell them to do it. But they know what lie to tell. That's a very effective lie, because the creator of the universe told you to do it, has a very good reason to do it. Now, we are interpreting a story in a book. I don't care what your religious commitments are or not. We're interpreting a story in the book. In the book, God himself speaks to Abraham. So the story is a story about a case where the creator really did tell the person to do what he did. Well, then he's perfectly justified in doing it. And the others are simply making it up. The failure is not that the reason is not appropriate and powerful enough to justify what you're doing. The problem with them is they made up the reasons. That's just not true, what they made up. Okay? So I think that in the end, we're not facing a philosophical problem here. Okay? Okay. Take a look at page 223. This is a very famous thing. Pharaoh has a dream, and he wakes up in the morning. He's very agitated, and he can't figure out what it is. And he calls his magicians and necromancers, and they offer him various suggestions, and he rejects them. And then one of the servants says, "Oh, you know, I was in jail a while ago." And there was another guy there, this Hebrew slave, Joseph, and he was pretty good at interpreting dreams. So why don't you get him? And then Joseph was called out of the, and he interprets it, and Pharaoh's happy. There's a puzzle here. In this scenario, even without the details, there's a puzzle here. Let's try it again. He has a dream, and he doesn't know what it means. He has a dream, and he doesn't know what it means. He calls his magicians, his wise men, advisors, necromancers, everything else. They offer interpretations, and he rejects them. Then he calls Joseph. Joseph offers an interpretation, and he accepts it. Do you hear a problem here? What's the problem?
Why didn't he believe his advice?
Worse than that.
Why does he believe?
It's accepting what he wants to accept.
Worse than that. You're on the right track, but have to say clearly, what's wrong with this story?
He doesn't actually want anyone else's input.
Well, you're already sort of down the trail of it. You're explaining something, but there's a problem in the story. When reading the story, I should say, but that doesn't make sense. Why doesn't it make sense? Because if he doesn't know what the dream means, then
how does he choose who he believes?
yeah, how can he say to the magicians and necromancers, your interpretation is wrong, and say to Joseph, your interpretation is right, if he himself doesn't know what it means? It's very peculiar. The logic of it is very peculiar. And I will show you that there's a piece of modern philosophy which is based on exactly the same structure. But now I want you to take a look at page 223. This describes the dream and the interpretations that is offered by the necromancers, just verses 1 through 8. Look very carefully, very minute, be very picayune. Look carefully at tense, look carefully at number, look carefully at pronouns, and see if you can't find an oddity or an inconsistency in the text which will lead you to an answer. Read very carefully. I recommend you read through it at least twice. Verses 1 through 8.
There's marshland on bank of the river.
Much worse than that. Much more open, obvious. This, if you find the problem, it doesn't require any thought or any philosophy or psychology, anthropology, or sociology, or history or economics or anything. It's just grammar. You read through it a couple of times. Look carefully at verse 8. Just look at verse 8 carefully. If you wrote this in a composition in 6th grade, your English teacher would put a big red X next to it and minus 5 points.
None could. No one.
That's just poetic. I wouldn't have translated that. I wouldn't have used poetry. But no, it's worse than that. Much worse than that.
The dream at the end of 8, it says none could interpret them for Pharaoh, but at the beginning it says Pharaoh related his dream to them. But
correct. His dream is singular. None could interpret them as plural. What happened? What happened? Singular and plural. See how easy that is? Nothing deep there, right? Now go back and tell me, how many dreams did he have? Look carefully at the text.
It's not 2.
Look carefully at the text. Pay attention to the difference between verbs and nouns.
1.
Why do you say that?
Because Ramban says that.
But where in the verse do you see it? Where in the verse do you see it? It's explicitly there.
Verse 7.
Yeah, what does it say?
It had been a dream.
It had been a dream. It says a dream right there at the end of verse 7.
Yeah, but verse
Didn't
5.
he wake up in the interim?
Now look at how the passage is structured. You have the verb to dream twice, but you have no noun till you get to the end.
But verse 5 says second.
He dreamt, and then he dreamt. There was an interim, that's right. But there are 2-act plays. How many plays did you see? A baseball game has 7 innings, 9 innings, right? 9 innings if it doesn't get rained out. That's a 9-part game, but it's one game. So he dreamt, he awoke, he dreamt again. Those are verbs. That just tells you what's happening. He dreamt, he awoke, he dreamt again the second time. That's right. He dreamt the second time. Now, what is this sequence? 2 dreams are one. It tells you it had been a dream. 2 sequences in one dream. You probably had that experience. You have a dream and you sort of wake up and then you go back to the dream. Right? You fall asleep again, you go back to the dream. Right? Now, can you put it together and explain to me what happened when the necromancers and the magicians offered their interpretations and how he responded?
They offered 2 explanations.
And he said,
No good.
he said, I don't know what it means, but I know it's one. That piece of information I have. I don't know what it means to imply, what it means to communicate, but I know it's one. And if you guys are telling me that it's 2, then I know you're wrong. Okay? Now let me show you something unbelievable. Take a look on page 227. Even if I didn't have all this background for you, what happens now it should be shocking. He tells the whole dream to Joseph, and this is Joseph's response. Joseph said to Pharaoh, the dream of Pharaoh is a single one. That's what he starts with. The first thing he says is that it's a single one. Not that the cows are this and the wheat is that and the river. No, it's a single dream. Okay. He goes on and on. Look at the end of 26. It's a single dream. Says a second time. Then he goes through the whole explanation. 32, when he gets finished with his speech, he says, as for the repetition of the dream to Pharaoh 2 times, I told you twice that it's one dream. So you'll ask me, if it's one dream, how come it's the same message twice? How come it was the sequence was repeated in this one dream? I'll tell you why. Because it's definite, it's decided upon, and it's going to happen quickly. Joseph refers to the singleness of the dream 3 times. Isn't the text waving a flag? Joseph's the only one who gets it. But he doesn't just get it sort of by the by. He makes that the most singly repetitive statement in his interpretation. So Pharaoh says, God, this guy's got it. He's got it. All the other advisors thought it was 2. I know it's 1. I didn't tell anybody that it's 1. That's the way I can test. They all said it was 2. And he, not only does he say that it's 1, but he says it 3 times. So he's got it in spades. That's how he did it. Now let me tell you something about philosophy. A great deal of philosophy, for thousands of years, has been an effort to define certain key concepts. Beauty, truth, justice, knowledge, reality. Beginning of the 20th century, there were people who questioned this whole process. How do you go looking for a definition of a concept? Either you understand the concept or you don't. If you understand it already, you could look for a definition. If you like, you have spare time and spare cash, but it doesn't seem like it's very important. If you don't understand the concept, when someone offers a proposed definition, how do you evaluate it? How can you decide whether the proposed definition is correct or incorrect if you don't understand the concept? How can we make sense out of this project of looking for a definition of a concept? Good question, hey? And the answer is, of course, you have partial understanding of the concept. You have partial understanding of the concept. So here's what happens. Somebody offers a definition, you say, let's see how it matches my partial understanding. If it matches, and not only that, it gives me insight. It integrates, organizes what I know about the concept and gives me a sense of understanding of that, then I may use that definition to clarify the part of the concept that I don't understand. So I start with the partial understanding. That's exactly what happened with the dream. Pharaoh had partial understanding of the dream. He had one crucial feature, that it's a single dream and not 2. He used that to disqualify the magicians and advisors and to validate Joseph. And in that way, he could accept the rest of Joseph's interpretation. Are we together? Okay. There's more to say about the philosophical side, but let's just finish up this. We're on 227. Now, he tells him there's going to be, well, let's just read through it quickly, the top of the page. What is the dream about? The dream is, he sees 7 healthy cows and then 7 emaciated, starving cows, and the 7 emaciated cows eat up the 7 healthy cows. Same thing with kernels of grain, 7 good kernels, 7 bad kernels, and 7 bad kernels eat up the 7 good kernels. That's what he tells Joseph, and he says, I don't know what it means. What does Joseph say? The dream of Pharaoh is a single one. What God is about to do, he has told Pharaoh, 7 good cows are 7 years, 7 good ears are 7 years. It is a single dream. 7 emaciated and bad cows emerged after them, 7 years. Same thing with the grain, scorched by the east wind. There shall be 7 years of famine. It is this, what I've told the Pharaoh, what God is about to do, he showed Pharaoh. Behold, 7 years are coming, great abundance throughout the land of Egypt. Then 7 years of famine will arise. After them, all the abundance of the land will be forgotten. The famine will ravage the land. And the abundance of the unknown in the land, face the subsequent famine, is severe. And they're repeating it because it's definite and it's going to happen right away. Now Joseph goes on. Let Pharaoh seek out a discerning and wise man and set him over the land of Egypt. Let Pharaoh proceed and let him appoint overseers of the land, that he should prepare the land of Egypt during the 7 years of abundance. Let them gather all the food of those approaching good years. Let them amass the fine grain under Pharaoh's authority. Safeguard it. The food will be reserved for the land against the 7 years of famine, which will be before the land of Egypt, so the land will not perish in the famine. Commentators here raise a question. Joseph, you're standing in front of an emperor. He asked you a question. The question was, what do the dreams mean? So you interpreted the dreams. And now you're giving him free advice. Isn't that a chutzpah? Okay, it's Jewish, so of course chutzpah is okay. But still, what is his justification for offering this advice? Says the Ramban, it's a continuation of interpreting the dream. Why? If he had stopped and said, the 7 good cows are 7 good years, the 7 bad cows are 7 bad years, you have to know there are going to be 7 years of abundance and 7 years of famine. If he had said that, what would he have left out of the dream uninterpreted?
Someone needs to take care of the stock.
Why do the bad cows eat the good cows? Why do they do that? You want to say 7 good years and 7 bad years? Have the 7 good cows enter stage right and have them parade across the stage. And then have the 7 bad cows enter stage right and parade across the stage. The 7 good ones, the 7 bad ones. What is that element of the dream that the bad ones eat the good ones? So Joseph says, the dream is telling you what to do. It's telling you, take the extra food in the abundant years and save it, and that's how you'll survive in the years of famine. Now, remember what Joseph says in 33. I got one more point to make. Let Joseph seek out a discerning and wise man and send him over to the land of Egypt. Okay? Next page. The matter appeared good in Pharaoh's eyes, the eye of all his servants. Pharaoh said to his servants, could we find another like him, a man in whom is the Spirit of God? Then Pharaoh said to Joseph, since God has informed you of all this, there can be no one so discerning and wise as you. You shall be in charge of my palace. By a command shall my people be sustained. Only by the throne shall I outrank you. So you see what Pharaoh's doing. Pharaoh is quoting Joseph's words. What did Joseph say in 33? Let Pharaoh seek out a discerning and wise man. So what does Pharaoh say to Joseph? You're it. There's no one as discerning and wise as you are. That's how he qualifies him to put him in charge. Very nice. But look at Pharaoh's statement in 39. Pharaoh said to Joseph, since God has informed you of all this, there could be no one so discerning and as wise as you. Does that make obvious sense? Since God told you all this, you're the most discerning and wise person around.
It doesn't mean he's discerning and wise. It just means someone told him.
Yeah, well, what does this qualify him as discerning and wise? God told him. Maybe he's very pious. He's very frum. He's very pious. God loves him because he offers sacrifice. How does this qualify him as discerning and wise?
But God spoke to him, and he actually knew what I mean. After Pharaoh asked all the wise men, so if he knows over all the wise men because God told him, so clearly he has this he is wise enough to be able to be higher than the other wise men.
Why isn't he just reporting what God told him?
Because why did God choose him to report?
Oh, so this you could say, why did God choose him to report? According to our tradition, prophets are wise and discerning and holy people. God doesn't just choose anybody to be a prophet. That's according to our tradition. But this is Pharaoh speaking. Must I assume that in the ancient Egyptian religion, the gods will only address someone like that? It could be. It could be. But I have no evidence to it. The truth is, there's another translation. This bothered me for years until I came across one of the commentators. In the Hebrew, there's another way to read the verse. The other way to read the verse is, since God has informed you of all this, a wise and discerning person isn't equal to you. Ein chacham v'navon kamocha. A wise and discerning person isn't equal to you. Pharaoh is rejecting Joseph's criterion. No, I don't want a wise and discerning person. I want a person connected to God. That's what I want. That's superior to a wise and discerning person. If I find wise and discerning people, they're not kamocha, they're not like you. You're superior to that, and that's why I'm putting you in charge. Okay?